Welcome back to the Pitching Podcast. This is part two of empowering physicians and a new approach to financial freedom with, again, the legend, Marty Nichols. So, Marty, welcome back. We're excited to continue the conversations.
You're going to make it keep calling me a legend, and my family and friends won't be able to tolerate me.
No, they all love you. They understand it, especially your brother, Chris. He understands who the number one brother is. Look, last time we talked, it was really rounding out what's going on in the healthcare space, this constant evolving space. Reimbursement rates, when we talked about it in a pre-call, reimbursement rates have really been cut for physicians year over year. What, there was a 1.8% rate. I think it was 1.8, but that's going into effect soon. But you mentioned like in the next few years, there's even more rate reductions for the physician's fee schedule.
CMS has already put out for next year, they're talking about another 2.8% cut to physicians' reimbursement from Medicare. And of course, then private insurance will follow.
So again, like we're asking these doctors to do more, but we're giving them less. Like I just don't quite get it. It's not adding up to me. And then now it's not even like the doctors. Again, it's like the bottom line of their practices just is getting affected left and right. How can you afford to stay in practice now? Or why would you want to?
And that's something that's scary, is that part of the plan, because what's really interesting is in the last cut, CMS cut the physicians aspect of the reimbursement by 2.8%. Now, if the theory behind this is to reduce the cost of healthcare, why did they then turn around and increase the HOPD, the hospital outpatient reimbursement, by 2.6%? Right. So
Yeah.
if you put on a tinfoil hat and take a look back at this, it's almost as if there's an entity in power that's trying to force physicians or herd them into an employment deal, and they're hiding behind trying to reduce the cost, but they've done nothing to reduce the cost. And we talked about that in the last one. I also made a mistake. I went back and listened to the last one. My math wasn't very good. We talked about PE buying out a group. If it's a 30-person group, I threw a number of 200 million out because that one of the presentations I saw that number. It would have been, the typical offer would be 30 million. That's still a staggering amount of money.
That's life-changing money. We talked about, again, like what physicians have worked their butts off. They're really trying to build out a practice, but what's the exit strategy? And it's hard to do so because, like you said, if physician A is getting retired, you got a younger physician B. Well, no, I'm not going to buy their practice. I'm just going to wait for you to retire, and then I'll start picking up those patients. So the exit strategy for a startup is clear and simple, and you understand it from day one. That's not the case here. That's frustrating.
Sure, we throw numbers around of 3x on the small side, depending on whether it's gross revenue or profitability, and as high as 10x on some of these things for ours, and the physicians get to the end, and literally it's a lot like what we felt or what we saw in the rep business as well too. The retirement plan is meet the new guy. Do you mind showing him around?
Yeah, no, we're not going to pay you for all the work that you've done, this $10 million territory. We're going to hand it over to this guy that just graduated. Good luck. Have fun. Like it's frustrating. I mean, there's some definitely tinfoil hat stuff we can go down, specifically around like the insurance side. I mean, what we saw in the news this week, potentially Optum's going to buy out Surgery Center Partners or SC. What's going on there? It seems like they're just trying to take over everything.
I mean, it's insane, isn't it? They already own SCA, and I just bought this last night trying to watch a hockey game with another monopoly, on the deal that just drove me nuts. Somehow, our federal government has decided that one of their primary roles in all of this that the government needs to play to make all these things work, for capitalism to work, the federal government's role should be, first and foremost, to enforce the monopoly, the monopoly rules and the laws. But somehow our federal government has decided that as long as you don't change the name, it's not really a monopoly. So AT&T can own AT&T Uverse, and then they can buy DirecTV as long as they leave it named DirecTV, and then they can buy Dish as long as they leave it named Dish, without the understanding that they still control pricing on all of it. And that's what we're seeing with, United. We talked about this briefly in the last one. United is United Health Insurance, but their parent company is Optum, which Optum owns the PBM. And then Optum owns Optum RX, which is the pharmacy. Now, Optum owns Surgical Care Affiliates, SCA, which is one of the largest ASC deals. And now they're going to buy, United Surgical Partners. But as long as we leave them individual names, we ignore the fact it's still owned by United.
So they're letting them do that, but they're forcing Google to try to break up Chrome and all these I mean, come on. Let's really search is fine. Don't break up Google. Break up the health systems that are owning every single part of it. And then we all wonder, well, why are medical healthcare costs so expensive?
At the
Tinfoil
very
hat guys,
least,
but
enforced consistently, right?
yeah.
That's what makes it work. You know, it shouldn't be hard to define where the monopoly comes in and where it's monopolistic, and then you just hold that across all the lines, you know,
Yeah.
and we go from there.
So fee schedules are just getting pushed. Doctors are getting squeezed. They're trying to, again, tinfoil hat everybody, but we're trying to talk about pushing them back to more hospital employment just to control the entire aspects of it. But that's not it anymore. Like, look, it used to be the case back in the day, and we talked about this on episode 1, and you came out of medical school, it was a privilege to take call. And that's what you did. You wanted to take call at the hospital. Life was different. There was dare we say, a better time for physicians. But that's not it anymore. You got to kind of take back the power. Physicians need to kind of take narrative into their hands. So how do they do so when you just got insurance or hospitals buying all these different pieces?
Look, it's also that's pointing to another real challenge and problem that we touched on a little bit in the last call as well too. If private equity and entities like that were providing a service, you know, shouldn't they, and you asked the question, shouldn't they provide marketing? Shouldn't they provide ways to bring additional patients and stuff through the door? And, you know, years ago when you were a resident, when you got out of your residency or if you were a fellow, part of the privilege of taking call was that was how you built your practice. So you were kind of paying your dues. It was kind of a neat little thing that you would pay your dues. You'd take the people that came in the middle of the night. You would take the call that the older surgeons had already done. But that was also a means with which you built your practice. The demand for the services, and especially in MSK, but across almost all medicine, have gotten so large. And then with these continual cuts and the continual pressure that we've put on it, there's fewer and fewer people getting in to doctors, and we've restricted the number of doctors that get in. Demand is just not the problem, right? These guys can do as many, if you're a total joint surgeon, you can do as many total joints as you're physically capable of doing. It doesn't really require much marketing or taking call. If you're an arthroscopic or a sports medicine surgeon, the cases and stuff are there.
Yeah.
So that's not really going to help us address or fix the problem. I think that the commonality that really kind of brought you and I together is that we're starting to see, and we're part of this new uprising or the next generation. Up until now, the majority of these entities within healthcare have been, and this is where I started my career. We talked about it in the first deal. As a rep, I was blessed. I got to make a very good living off of the physician. There's a huge amount of the industry and entities that focus on making money off of physicians. And the next generation is going to have to be, if we want really good surgeons to stay in this practice or to train and come into the practice, and we want to keep the good ones from exiting, it's the transition towards organizations like PitchSync, organizations like Pelto, organizations like FICAP, organizations like Physicians First. They're now looking to make money with physicians. And that's just going to have to be the next generation if we want to keep, you know, the good, the best of the best to continue to be surgeons or to be doctors.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting too, before we dive into that, I think the other thing, and we've talked about this, is physicians are brilliant. They're great, but business is not taught in medical school. And so there's good organizations that are coming together and saying, hey, we do have to again take the narrative, make monies with physicians. But then there's physician focused groups like Merge Medical, who's understanding,
Sure.
say, hey, look, together we can really teach what's going on. We can give more opportunities to find some financial freedoms and flexibilities in their daily lives, their personal lives, their practices, whatever. So, you know, there really is this groundswell of movement of, hey, let's take the narrative back, you know, especially with like financial literacy, if you will, understanding how to invest properly. But your group's doing another really interesting way. I mean, you guys are trying to say, hey, look, again, we've all, I was a sales rep as well. We've made monies off of physicians. I work for Strategic that's making money off of physicians' projects they're developing. But now you're doing it differently. You're saying, let's make it with them. So let's talk about what Physicians First Bancorp is doing in trying to help in this narrative of saying, hey, bring control back to where it should be. And that's at the physician level.
Sure, and there's a lot of altruism. I think to preface this conversation as we go into it, I think there's a couple of things that we need to really address. We hear consistently that physicians are bad business people, but you touched on it in your statement. Physicians weren't taught business, right? There was a reason for that. When if you had appendicitis, and you went to see a general surgeon, they weren't to look at you. Your ability to pay them or how much money they got paid shouldn't affect their diagnosis and treatment. If you were in a motor vehicle accident and you've got an open tib fib fracture, so you're going to the orthopedist on call, once again, your ability to pay shouldn't affect how they treat it. There's one diagnosis, there's a right diagnosis and a right treatment, right? We now, if we want physicians to be good business people, we need to accept the reality that physicians weren't traditionally bad business people because they were incapable. It just wasn't what we wanted, right? They weren't taught it. They were taught to focus on other things. They clearly represent, from an educational level and from a drive level, just to get through residency and medical school, these are some of the most driven people and some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. So if we want them to be business people, they can be really good business people. But good business says that if you're an orthopedic surgeon and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you get that phone call and that patient's been in a motor vehicle accident and there was alcohol involved and they're not insured, good business says you don't go in,
Yeah.
and is that really what we want? I think that that's part of what a lot of us are trying to solve with the concept of making money with physicians, and at least Physicians First Bank. Part of our goal is I spent so much of my career working to help the physicians become more efficient, to be able to take 2 minutes off that surgery or 4 minutes off that case or 5 minutes off the turnover time so that they could see and do more patients. And really what we would like to do now is to help the physicians generate some revenue for doing something that they do anyway, so that it can take some of that pressure off. And once again, just like I made the statement before, I'm not saying that being a hospital employee is bad if that's what you want to be. And if you want to be part of PE and it's good for you, you should do it. When you're forced to go there, that's where the problem is. And I think those of us that are creating entities that we talk about making money with physicians and Physicians First Bank, what we would like to do is allow the physicians to generate enough revenue now that they get to make those choices. If I want to do 1,000 total joints a year because that's what drives me and I'm good and I'm capable of doing it, then do 1,000 joints a year. If I don't believe that I can physically or mentally do 1,000 joints a year, and if my threshold is 600 or my threshold is 400, can we help them make money doing things that they're doing anyway? So that instead of seeing 5 extra patients in clinic in a day, they spend 5 minutes more with each one of those patients each day. If instead of doing 600 total joints a year, they can do 450, but not only enjoy the lifestyle while they're working, but have some money at the end, have a vehicle and an entity that they own that's outside of Stark, that's not regulating and forcing them to sell it out. Let them practice medicine with the focus being the patient, which was the reason we didn't teach physicians business in the first place. Was we wanted their focus to be the treatment and care of a patient.
That's a great way of looking at this. I mean, you guys are really mission driven, and your co-founders, and we've talked about this, Dr. Chambers. I mean, he started out practice the way we talked about. He, small town or rural townish, was coming out of school, working, taking call in the hospital, built out a good network. But they realized there's another issue going on, right? When you've got just a few of you in an area, I mean,
He was a sports medicine fellowship trained doctor. In his fellowship, he worked with the Atlanta Braves. I mean, how cool is that? You're getting to be with pro baseball when you're young, you're a kid, those are all your heroes. So he's working with all these baseball players and everything else. When he first started his practice in Myrtle Beach, back to the taking call, at that time, Myrtle Beach, and they still hosted it. Doesn't seem to be quite as bad, but they had Bikers Week.
Yeah.
250,000 bikers come in for a week, and he would end up taking that call. And literally, he'd sleep at the hospital for a week. And this is a sports medicine fellowship trained doctor that's now doing open tib fib fractures for motorcycles that went off the edge of the bridge, and all sorts of other trauma. So paid the dues, right? It came up through it. At some point, you should bring him on, because his whole journey too of the consolidation, where he started out, there was 3 or 4 small groups in Myrtle Beach. Just his struggle and fight to help be able to practice within that community, and now where we are today, to try to take it to the next level and provide a different piece for the physicians. It was an interesting journey.
I mean, yeah, the physician entrepreneurial journey is to me is just amazing. I mean, you've gone on call, you've got all these things, you've sacrificed a lot to be able to get the education. Sometimes putting family on hold. Things. I mean, they've sacrificed a lot, and then some of them decide, hey, this is I want more. I want to go into the crazy entrepreneurial world, which is some mind blowing to some, but it's really fun. I personally know Dr. Chambers. Everyone, he's an amazing person. What he's done.
It's true with most of them. It's true with most of them. Look, I think part of the discussion we should go down today and talk about stuff, how we're going to change it. I think you and I both agree, and a lot of these companies, the power needs to move back to the physicians. We need to put it in their hands. And a lot of people will scratch their heads because, again, we've painted this picture of these physicians living life really well. But that's rich. It's because they're working really hard. They're making good money. So they tend to have nice homes. They tend to have nice cars, and they have easy access to capital. If they get up tomorrow morning, they've got another 10 surgeries. They got another 40 patients. So the demand is always there for them. It's not like you and I in some of our businesses where we've had to go out and create the demand. Yeah. But I think what really differentiates it, again, is they tend to look at healthcare from the patient up. And even if you look at it from an economic standpoint, if we take a total joint arthroplasty surgeon, and right now they gross roughly $1,000 to do a total hip. If we put the power back into the physician where it belonged, and that's why the script and stuff was placed in their hands. When that patient comes in for the surgery, they're going to get their $1,000 to do that procedure. So now, if all of a sudden the implant is another $2,300, the physician is inclined to take it like the hospital does, and they'll take a $3,800 implant. And because they're business, they look at it for business people, they're marking these things up to $27,000. Okay. The line item at $27,000, you can go, and you don't have to believe me. Ask a doctor if you ever have had a total joint. Ask the hospital for a line item invoice and take a look. They mark it up $27,000 to $27,000. Then they play this game. Well, that's billed charges versus collected charges. So they negotiate a contract with the insurance companies for 50 cents on the dollar. So people think, oh, good, that insurance company got me a discount. But they took a $1,000 implant. They marked it to $27,000. And then they claim they're taking a loss at $13,000. And they do that because they have the revenue cycle to feed for the quarterly over quarterly growth for all the shareholders and everything else they have to pay. They do the same thing with the imaging for the x-rays and stuff. But if we really take a good business look at this and we look at and we put the power back into the physician, if the physician's already getting $1,000 for that, and there's a $4,000 implant, let's just say that they mark it up 10%. That's another $400. That's 40% increase to that physician's pay, right? There's no need for them to mark it up any more than that. If an x-ray image costs $100 and the physician marks it up to $150, that's another 5% increase in their revenue. That's a really handsome increase without killing the patient. They don't have to do these 400% and 500% markups and then bring it back down. So from a business and economic sense, there's a lot of merit to putting the power back in the physician's hands.
Let's walk through your model a little bit, how you guys are specifically doing that. Like, let's dive pretty deep into the model of Physicians First Bancorp and giving the power back to physicians.
Sure. So what we realized is that, again, physicians through their journey make a lot and float a lot of money. And the graph that we saw at every single meeting that really took us to where we wanted, to where we ended up, was physicians reimbursement. The graph is down, 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 has been for over 20 years. We're down there. But their overhead curve is a consistent up, up, up. Right now, it's not uncommon for a physician's overhead to run well over 60%. So, if they got $1,000 for that surgery, a lot of people think, well, $1,000 isn't bad for an hour procedure, but 60% is gone. They really only got 400, and then that's pre-tax, and they've got to pay the tax out of that. But the physicians are floating an awful lot of capital and stuff through. And because their model is real unique, banks have always traditionally understood that doctors are a good credit risk because they make good float on their capital and they tend to pay their bills. But they haven't really understood a bank. We've all seen a restaurant, a hip, cool, and trendy restaurant come into a community, and it's a little small building and the line's out the door and people can't get in. And it goes on this way for a year or two, and it's making a really lot of money. And then all of a sudden the owners decide we just need a bigger place. So they find a bigger place 2 miles down the road, and then the restaurant goes bankrupt. It doesn't have the same ambience. It doesn't have the same deal. Location in that world is really important. Location, location, location. But in the physician world, the location didn't matter. And the doctors, because they weren't trained in business, didn't want to own the building. They just wanted their deal. And if they had to move, if their lease ran out, they moved. As a patient, when you get the postcard in the mail that says your doctor's office is moving, you're not looking for a new doctor. You're looking at the map to see, is it a closer drive to me, or do I have to drive further to see my doctor? The power is in the charts. So traditionally, doctors haven't really wanted to own the real estate, and many of our ASCs are currently in rented facilities. So now what happens is you get these new young physicians that come out of their residency and fellow, and they want to join a group. We talked in the first session about not being forced to go into hospital employment. When we meet and talk with a lot of those surgeons that are in their first 5 years of their practice, and we ask them why they became hospital employees, there's about 20%, maybe 25, that will tell you, look, I learned to practice medicine. My passion is taking care of patients. I don't want to have to deal with hiring and firing people. I don't want to have to deal with billing, accounts receivable, and stuff like that. So I just want to go to work for the hospital where I can see patients, let them take care of that. So they're in essence hitting the easy button. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. I think a lot of them become disgruntled because they lose too much autonomy and they can't treat their patients, but that's where they go. About 70% of those physicians, when we talk to them, they say, look, when I looked at the private practice, which I really wanted to do, I wanted to be into private practice. Had I been able to afford to buy into what's referred to in our world, the ancillaries, to buy into the ambulatory surgery center, to buy into the imaging, to buy into the PT, if I could have afforded to do that, I would have went into private practice. Mm-hmm. As a young individual that just got out of school carrying $350,000 to $400,000 of student loan debt, I mean, the first thing the bank asks, okay, you want to borrow $250,000 to buy into a surgery center. The traditional banker sees a building. And they like buildings, right? That's a tangible asset. So they think, all right, you're buying into a surgery center. What's your previous work history? None, right? How much debt do you have? A lot, 400,000 of student loans, 350,000 of student loans alone, right? And they scratch their head. They go, but this place you're going to work for wants you to pay them to go to work. And they say, no, I can go to work as a doctor. I can see clinic. I can see patients, and I'll make good money. But if I can buy in and become a partner in the surgery center, I can increase my first year's revenue substantially. And again, the banker sees a building, they get excited. They say, okay, how many shares will you have? Federal regulations, stark laws, mandate that each doctor has one share. It's not like they've got 1,500 or 4,000 shares. Each doctor gets one share. And the banker says, well, how much can one share worth? How much physical equity will you have in the building? And they say, it's a leased building. The banker's head explodes, right? They think, this is just crazy. But it's a very sound business investment because it's going to increase their revenue substantially. And it's going to see to it that give them sticking power and getting them to stay. So that's kind of a niche that we want to do. There's a lot of similarities between large hospitals and large banks. And that is large hospitals play the numbers game. They really don't care about the patients that much. They really don't care about the doctors. And I know that sounds cold and callous, but it's just reality. It's just a fact on this thing. What the hospitals care about now is throughput, through capital, and revenue. And hospitals, the doctors that do the most cases or that bring the most revenue generating cases get the most attention. And it's the same thing with a bank. A bank looks at things from a risk analysis. So they look at loans. And what's interesting is that banker that turned down that fellowship trained doctor or that resident for the $250,000 to buy into the surgery center that would have increased their revenue for life will turn around and loan that same fellow $90,000 for their first SUV.
Yeah.
Because it's something to understand. It's a tangible asset. Okay, that car I can see, and if I need to repossess it, I know I've got that car and then the money. So we look to allow physicians, what we've learned with the ambulatory surgery center and stuff is that ownership drives good behavior, right? Because it's something you own, you take better care of it, you look at it. And then focus. When the entity focus, when the ASC, whether it's a GI ASC, whether it's a cardiovascular ASC, whether it's a orthopedic MSK or spine ASC, when the entity focuses on that, and that's what they do all the time, they get very good at it. So the work environment's better, throughput's better, patients are happier, outcomes are better, and the physicians get to make a little bit more money for doing something they do anyway. And that's what we've applied to banking. Since they need money and they need capital, let's allow them ownership. That drives good behavior. You're not going to take out a loan from a bank that you own and then not pay it back, right?
Oh,
It drives good things. If we can then get them capital and get them additional revenue in their stream, then they can adjust their time that they need with their patients accordingly because they don't have to make all of their money just off of the patient. And we think we can even take it a step further. The insurance model is so broken that there's so many people today, the average person can't afford the deductible more times than not, especially in January, February, March, to get the care that they need. So we believe we can come in on the other side, and by having the physicians involved in the financial aspect of this, we believe we can make the overall option or ability for care for patients even greater that way.
Love that. That's amazing. So you've personalized it essentially. You've taken what the bank doesn't understand, that this really is a sound investment opportunity, and you've personalized it and really pushed further that, hey, we know what this is working on. But you said something about giving the physician the financial opportunity. When you take a loan from a bank you own, then you're going to pay it back. Well, I don't know if the audience knows yet. You're doing something, and I hope I don't get you in trouble for this, but you're doing something pretty unique where you are giving physicians the right to the bank. And so you're raising money from physicians and only physicians essentially at this point, correct?
Primarily physicians, people that are within the industry. In other words, it's back to the focus. When the ambulatory surgery center focuses, when a doctor takes, an orthopedic surgeon takes a doctor to a hospital, generally the first case of the morning, they get a pretty good staff, that understands orthopedics. You get around that 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock window when people are doing lunch, and the doctor can walk into a room and the nurse that they have may actually be a cardiovascular nurse, or they might be a trauma nurse or something else that is covering while the other nurse or tech is away. So now the doctor is trying to train or work with the staff. And it's not that they're not good nurses and not good techs. It's just they haven't done the repetition. They don't have the focus, right? So now all of a sudden you have an entity that's focused on healthcare, focused on understanding what the patient's needs are and what the doctor's needs are and what they need equipment for. So a doctor doesn't have to take time from their day if they need a C-arm, which is a necessary piece of capital equipment to do a procedure, but they don't get a bill for that C-arm. Doctors now get paid a global fee for doing the procedure. So if they want to borrow $130,000 for a C-arm, they don't have time to go down to their banker and the banker says, so wait a minute, what's a C-arm, right? And then so you get a bill each time you use it, or how does it generate revenue for you? So more times than not, they just borrow the money from the manufacturer because it's not worth their time to go talk to it. What we hope to do is bring the personalization and bring people that understand it, that not only do they know, what a C-arm does, you could have people that are truly their partners be able to look at it and say, look, that's great. Which model did you go with, or which product did you go with? And then be able to coach them and say, look, did you, with your volume, do you really need to spend that much? Have you looked at the lower model? And this is what it would do to your payment, right? Or it may even be a time, I could see a time where you could see somebody's upgrading and there's next one, and the bankers are saying, hey, what we can do is, I know where there's a used one, or I know there's one that will serve your purposes and could save you a lot of money. So that they're focused on that entity and that journey, and they're more of a true partner.
So it's almost like democratizing the financial opportunities within the healthcare system to only be for healthcare providers by healthcare providers. So I love that concept. You're giving them an opportunity to really drive change and take financial freedom back and in their hands for their practice and for their entire business.
Yeah. I mean, even if you take it and you want to make it a sports analogy and stuff, there's a reason that people don't play offense and defense in football, right? There's a reason that pitchers don't bat, right? There's certain things that happen in there and whatnot. Focus can be a really good thing and can be a very positive thing. But as we've allowed consolidation in the United States, and as we've allowed these things, to get so big, a banker from JP Morgan Chase or a banker from Bank of America, they deal with everything. One person might walk in and want to borrow money for a used car. The next one, a farmer walks in and they need money for a combine, or a tractor. A textile person comes in and they need a mill or they need a loom, and whatnot. So how do they even become really that good at their craft to really understand all these different products? So niche banking is going to be a reality, whether we like it or not. Everything, just like a city and everything else, all of these companies and stuff get big, but then they get so big that they can't really service. So then you have to bring it back into a focus.
The niche banking part of it. I mean, it's so true. How many times have we all gone somewhere and you think just outside of it in your normal life and you try to explain maybe what you do for a living. Sometimes people like, I know when I was a rep and I try to explain to my friends and family, like, you're in the operating room? Yeah. Well, doesn't the doctor know what they're doing? Yeah. So why are you there? Like, it's hard to understand if you're not in there.
You're actually in the room?
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess what I'm trying to go back to is what better group of individuals to understand what physicians need than physicians and industry that is trying to push them forward. So I love the model. We love what you're trying to do.
Take a look if you think about it, take a look at your journey and how you came to pitch sync and what you're doing, which again, trying to make money with physicians. You work for a large company. And if we look at it, this is the other thing that kind of amazes me, that when we've alienated and say, should we put the control of healthcare in physicians' hands, and are they too greedy? If you look at almost all of the changes, the positive changes for patient outcomes that have happened in my career, were almost all driven by the physicians. And in most cases, they were fought by the hospitals, insurance companies, and even the manufacturers. Early on, the small startup manufacturers, they like a doctor that comes to them with a new idea, because if it's a product that they can carve a niche with and create a deal, they can carve market share with it. But as the consolidation and stuff has happened, and I think this is kind of what drove you into your journey, you're with this large company. They already have 2 or 3 hips. They already have 2 or 3 knees. They have a couple of shoulders. Now a doctor comes along with a new innovation in it, and the manufacturer looks at it and says, I've got pretty good market share. The cost of what it's going to cost me to add that inventory, to add another product into this mix, to manage that product after I do and offer all these other options, am I going to be able to return the money for it? They don't ask, does this really help the patient? They're asking, can I return the money? And that was you coined the slow no, which once again, I love. It was a great one, because in a lot of cases, what those companies do is they want the doctor to bring them that idea. They then shelf that idea on the side, but they want and hope that along the journey that the doctor will be comfortable using one of their existing products. And the truth of the matter is, most doctors have gotten really good. They can take a product and they can get a good outcome, but it's stifling innovation. It was the hospitals that fought us and told us, when I got into this, we kept patients for 14 days after a total joint, in the hospital and stuff. And the doctors kept wanting to get them home, and the hospitals branded them as greedy and not wanting to round and not wanting to come in and see their patients. But we've proven now how much better these patients do. When we hit that 3-day window, the hospitals fought tooth and nail, because it affected how much they made. They didn't feel they were making enough money. They didn't ask whether it was good or better for the patient.
I mean, look at it now, full circle. Patients walk day one on a total knee replacement. I mean, they're out of the door immediately. It's so true. Innovation. Well, so the entire industry, the entire cycle is just really at this like standstill. And you guys are really addressing from the financial side. You were kind of right. We have to give the power back to the physicians, because innovation is also not happening at the large strategic levels anymore. And even the FDA is aware of that. I mean, they've got this trial program, TAPS, where they're getting in with these early stage companies or physician innovators as early as possible to try to get as much feedback and say, this is where you should go or not. They understand. It's nice to see the FDA doing something really innovative themselves and saying, let's engage early and let's find opportunities to do so, because innovation's not at the J&Js, it's at the startups, it's at the physician innovation level. And so I think that's what we're doing here too, is we want to do that. I want to give the power back to where it's, hey, I have an idea. I don't know where to go. It took the slow no, the 4 to 6 months. Well, forget that. I went to PitchInc in 4 to 6 months. I got a fully functioning prototype patent. I mean, everything's done. And now let's go back to these individuals, that the strategics, and say, hey, I've done the hard part. I've done the early stage. And so power is back with the physicians at the site. Power is back in the innovators' hands. And I think there's this groundswell movement of companies that are doing the same. Merch Medical is doing it from the financial side, being able to provide opportunities for physicians to invest. You guys are doing it to be able to take back the financial freedoms within there. Pelto, we talked about physicians having to come together. They're doing some really extremely amazing work to say, okay, together we can be more financially sound and grow further as one organization.
I mean, again, going back to your journey and what you're doing with PitchSync, I mean, it's so wonderful because once again, there's a lot of these ideas and a lot of these innovations that if you look at them from the patient up, there definitely could be a value add to the patient. And then if there's zero revenue to start out with, if you can partner and help the physicians on that journey, any additional revenue they make is growth. So it could be something that could have a huge benefit to the patient, but it may only have a $2 million uptick a year, for a deal. For a small doctor or for a small company, that the value of doing something better for the patient and the uptick of 2 million annually,
Yeah.
which is a very small number, is exciting. But if you're Stryker, you're Johnson and Johnson, you're Medtronic, your couple billion-dollar company, $2 million doesn't excite you. They don't ever stop to think, but what will it do to the patient and what will it do to the overall continuum of care? They're literally looking at purely from the revenue down. And what you offer and what I'm really excited about is you're partnering with physicians, giving them an opportunity to not only share in it and generate some revenue to own their own ideas, to drive a better outcome for the patient. The patient kind of comes first.
It's so fun to look. It will be so fun to look back a year from now and just see what has been developed through this platform from the start of our physician innovator side. I mean, it was fun. Last Friday night, pretty late, I get an email from one of the guys we work with who says, I have a doc, who's an orthopedic surgeon. He's created something for the dental industry. Can we get this done? And it's like, let's get on a call with him. I think it was like 9 o'clock almost East Coast time. Next thing you know, we've got this concept. We've got a plan for him of where to go, and he is so grateful and thankful. And someone says, "Where have you guys been? This is so brilliant to be able to help." Like, it's so much fun to see someone's dream as an innovator come to life when they have the resources available at their hands. And this doctor, I applaud him because he's gone and done what so many people wouldn't do. He found a way to build a prototype himself. He found an attorney, but now he's stuck. And one call, and it's okay. Now I have a path forward. I know where to go. It's so much fun to see that. I love it.
And those are the things too. This is something else that the big companies look at. If you just take company X and they've got a knee that's out there for 15 years right now, is the knee doing well? Yeah, 94, 95% survivorship at 17, 20 years. That's fantastic. I mean, these patients, are happy and everything else. The byproduct that is there's literally no liability for that company, because if something happens in failures, they can point back and say, look, there's been thousands of these done. They've been done very well. They're playing it very safe. But a minor change in that implant, there may be a few failures and stuff or a few challenges along the way, but it could have a huge upside and open the door for other things, for more rapid recovery, for better things like that. And those, they don't want to chase it because the liability is, but the doctors and what you're doing, it's going to open the door, and each of these things can lead to other, better things. And it's just it's a better ecosphere. And it's the wave. Your statement, it'll be fun to look back. It really will. I mean, there's a handful of us and a handful of organizations right now that are pushing ropes uphill. And I know you and several colleagues, we kind of almost have to be a support group for each other, to help us on our journey because it can be so frustrating. But once we break through that and stuff, I do think that it's the future, and the next wave is the physicians need to be, healthcare should be between the patient and physician. And for your world, I got to believe that having Dr. McCary now come into the FDA, I mean, this is really exciting stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
his work, and the books that he did, I just finished The Price We Pay, which was one of his great books. His newest book's just out. I haven't finished it yet. McCary should be a brilliant pick for being the head of
Yeah.
the FDA.
I'll have to read the book. I can't wait to see what happens. I just again, you see these programs in the FDA that are like, hey, we actually need to engage early. And I mean, again, we could look back. There's so much fun innovation happening that can really push patients' lives. Like you talk about customize implants for patients, or putting sensors in that really can track the rehabilitation process and being able to address issues well before they happen. It's really impressive to see what some of these founders, what some of these innovators are doing. I mean, it's my every week I can look back. I'm like, how did you come up with this? Like, this is unbelievable. Some of these people, but you're right. When you're trying to disrupt an industry, there's so much pushback and there's so
Think
much
think
pain
even
that comes
about
with
your
this.
conversations on this journey, Stephen, with what you've done with pitch sync has got to be really exciting for you because again, when an idea came into you in the marketing department at a big company, whatnot, the first thing they want to do is they run it through, they call it their COG, the cost of goods and services, and whatnot. And that's the very first thing they're looking at from the revenue down, is this money. But as these physicians bring you their ideas and whatnot, it's exciting because the conversations are never about, I'm going to get rich. This is how much money it's going to be making. It's going to be saying, this is the benefit to the patient. If we can get this out, this is how we can improve that patient's life. This is how we can improve that outcome. It's refreshing. That's what healthcare should be about. And it should be fun. And that's what doctors were trained to do. You work hard, you keep your head down, you do right by the patient, and the money will take care of itself. And it did. It used to. That was a good thing. That was the reason that they were paid well. But that cut, and now it isn't. And now we want to fault for physicians for looking at money. You can't. But even then, when I talk to them and stuff, the thing that they don't ask me or don't get excited about isn't about how much money can I make if I invest in this bank. They're saying, so I could maybe get that piece of equipment I need, to treat my patients. We really need to add to surgical suites on because we can't see enough patients through. It's almost always about how they can do a better job of taking care of patients. And they just assume, they should, that the money should take care of itself.
But I mean, again, we've talked about this. We're disrupting an industry. There's a handful of companies, a handful of people we're working with that are really disrupting. But I invite everybody that has an idea that wants to help push this industry forward. And there's companies out there that we've talked about this. We want to bring everybody together, meeting of the minds to really say, how can we drive this forward? There's companies out there. We've talked a little bit, FICAP, Merge, I mean, all these. How do we do this together? Because together we can really make a really lasting impact. I'm not going to say the industry is broken, but it is ripe for innovative changes and making new opportunities. And you guys are truly leading the way on the financial side. I'm so excited for what you guys are doing.
Well, I am too, and I'm excited for what you've done and brought with me. It's something that we have to do. Physicians are guilty of this. Physicians need to stand up, right? For too long, they've just complained about their lot in life, and at some point, you have to stand up. They were busy working, and now they've gotten so busy, it's hard. Those of us that are in the startup world and stuff, it's difficult. It's hard to do this. It's mentally taxing, especially if you were used to making good money, and now you're draining, money. And people aren't getting to understand. But I think one of the things that we have to start doing better as organizations is getting together amongst us. And if what our real goal is, the thing that we all have in common is we're trying to make healthcare a better place. And we're trying to make that healthcare better from the physician and the patient up. So somehow at these meetings and stuff, the meetings should start to cater to people, like a Stryker and Zimmer and Medtronics. They've got budgets. They're going to come to the meetings and support meetings because they have money to spend. But the real innovation and stuff comes from our level and from the physician level. And I think we're stronger together. So bringing the organizations, getting involved with Medvanta and Pelto and PitchSync and Merge. Merge, you introduced me to. What a neat organization. I just really enjoyed that. They introduced me to a gentleman that's created ENT or Urgent. and whatnot to help change the way ENTs delivered and whatnot. I mean, these are all fun stuff. You know, we've got Dutch Rojas and FICAP and these things out here. And I think we need to get together sooner rather than later and start talking about, look, if we're really going to look back a year or two from now and really enjoy what we've done and see the change, we need to kind of work together on the things that we, you know, there's things that we may overlap, but there's far more things that we've got going in common, which is we want to make healthcare better for the physician and the patient.
This has been amazing. I really appreciate you coming in and informing us. I mean, this has been, I've learned a ton about it, but it's time. I leave everybody with this. It's time to change the narrative. It's time for the ones that actually really want to push together and make it change in the industry to do so. And let's wrap our arms around each other. Let's find a way to do so. And let's do so now. Stop waiting. Now is the right time. So I again, thank everybody. And Marty, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, man. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for being out there, and look forward. Maybe we can find another good topic to talk about because I enjoy the time here.
Maybe part 3 coming soon with one of those partners. So we appreciate it. And again, everyone, please follow, please share this as you can. We've done this all organically, so we really, really rely on everybody to help us spread the word. And again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you again, Marty.
All right.